Praise the Lord and hello, friends and family. Welcome to this edition of Today's Truth Revealed. I am the host, Elder Gibbs. I'm so glad that you took a moment out of your day to give us a little listen, to give this little program a listen. We certainly appreciate you tuning in, and you could be doing a lot of other things. So we're just so grateful to the Lord for you tuning in. So today, uh, I have a very special guest joining us, and it's been on a couple times before, but I don't know too many people. I just want to give some background on our discussion tonight, if you don't mind. Tonight we have Dr. Stillwagon on, and he wears many hats. As you may or may not remember, he is a chiropractor, and he was a airline pilot for over 30 years. Is that right?
That's right. 33 years. I've been a pilot for 53 years. And
Altogether.
yeah, 33 years of that was various airlines. And I actually retired from Delta Airlines in 2020.
All right. Well, so for years, there's been a controversial thing out there, especially us who notice things in these last days, big government, big brother, all of these things. These things go back to the 90s and maybe before, these theories out there. And one of the theories, you can call it conspiracy or not, is the chemtrails. All right. So a lot of people believe, and, that, and a lot of people that are well respected believe that we are being sprayed on constantly. So Dr. Stillwagon is admittingly telling us that he was an airline pilot and he's sprayed thousands, hundreds, or maybe thousands of miles of white lines behind him. But
Yeah.
before you get carried away, we're going to separate some fact from fiction tonight and try to get one thing about us: we are truth tellers and truth seekers. Wherever the evidence takes us, that's where we want to go. It doesn't matter my opinion or your opinion, but we want to be fact based. And tonight, uh, who better to learn this from than an actual airline pilot, eyewitness to a lot of things? So, Dr. Stillwagon, welcome to today's Truth Revealed. And please fill us in on what's fact, what's fiction with these white lines in the sky that everybody's so afraid of.
Yeah, well, I've been looking at those white lines ever since I was a teenager. I wanted to be an airline pilot at a very young age. And so, what I would do is I would go out in my backyard with a telescope and I would train the telescope on the sky looking for the contrail behind any jet that I could see up there. And when I would find the contrail, I would follow it with my telescope until I could focus in on the actual jet and find out what airline it was because I had a very, very strong desire to be an airline pilot. And I also had a radio with me that I could tune into air traffic control and actually listen to the conversation between the jet that I was actually looking at, talking to air traffic control, and all the while looking at the white stripe that was coming out of the back of the airplane. And obviously, the white stripe was aligned with the engines. So, of course, if it was a four engine jet, it had four stripes. Two had two, three had three. It was very obvious. I did notice that the white stripes back then were very, very solid, very heavy, very thick, and they would tend to dissipate rather quickly. Sometimes they did not, though. Sometimes they would last a very long time and literally stretch from horizon to horizon. And I was noticing that back in the 1970s. And there are people today that are saying that they've never seen that before. They'd never seen a contrail behind a jet stretch across the entire sky and last for a very long time. But I can tell you, Elder, I was looking at him as a kid. I saw it myself, And I've actually got pictures from books back in the 1950s that show the same thing. And if you're diligent enough, you can go back into history and look at some old videos from World War II, and you can see those white stripes in the sky behind aircraft that are flying high enough where the combustion that's taking place in that engine is creating water vapor. They all create water vapor, and the reason is because the fuel is mostly hydrocarbons, and so the hydrogen is going to combine with oxygen during the combustion process, and that creates H2O in the form of water vapor. And also, it creates a carbonaceous product, carbon atoms that are wrapped around very small, tiny nuclei. And so, whatever's coming out of the back of the engine is mostly water vapor. But that water vapor has to condense on something for you to be able to see it. So, there are nuclei that are always up there in the atmosphere. These nuclei include things like aluminum, barium, and strontium. And these are natural crustal minerals that are always on the Earth's surface. And they get lifted up into the atmosphere by storms, by winds, also by hurricanes. And a lot of it is up there, Elder, from volcanoes. And as you know, there's a lot of different minerals that are within the earth. And when a volcano erupts, it pushes all of those minerals, very, very tiny particles, high up into the stratosphere, higher than jets even fly. So that's how that stuff gets up there. And if we didn't have those nuclei that are always up there, if we didn't have those, we would never see clouds. You'd never have clouds because that's what a cloud is. A cloud is visible water vapor that has frozen around a nuclei or a nucleus, and that's what you see. And so that's exactly what's coming out of the back of a jet engine. It's a lot of water vapor, and the jets are flying at an altitude of usually 30 to 35,000 feet. And that's where the air is so cold that the water vapor will instantaneously freeze on those nuclei that I talked about. And that's what creates the white stripe. It's basically a cloud. It's a cloud that's made by the jet engine just from the process of flying through the atmosphere. Now, why do you see those lines sometimes and sometimes you don't? Well, it's all based upon what's called Schmidt-Appelman criteria, and anybody can look this up. This is very well known. It's physics. It's basically how much humidity is up there and is it able to support a visible cloud or not. So on some days where it's very dry, you won't see contrails at all. Those jets are still up there. Hundreds, sometimes thousands of them. And you can verify this by using some of the popular websites that are available today. And they're all free. One's called flightaware.com. Another is called Flight Radar 24. And the one that I use is called ADSB Exchange. And the reason I use ADSB Exchange is because it doesn't hide anything. Some of these corporate jets and private jets that are owned by, very wealthy people and rock stars and movie stars, and even corporations, they have the ability to block themselves from the Flight Radar 24 and FlightAware. They just tell them that they don't want their information broadcast on their platforms, and so they don't. But ADSB Exchange is different. They don't hide anything. If there's an aircraft up there that's flying with their transponder on, you're going to be able to see it and track it, and you'll know exactly what those aircraft are. So on any given day, Elder, if you step outside and you notice, man, this is a crystal clear blue sky. What a beautiful day. There's not even any clouds. If you go to one of those platforms and look real time, where you are, you can obviously see that there are literally hundreds to thousands of jets up there flying. You just can't see them. Now, some days you'll see the white stripe and it will disappear pretty rapidly. And that's because there's enough humidity up there for the ice crystals to become visible for a short time, but then they will evaporate. Now, on the days where you see those long white stripes that last for a very, very long time and turn into what are called high cirrus clouds that block the sun, and believe me, this has been happening since we've been flying in the troposphere. Anytime we take a combustion engine high enough and the air is cold enough and moist enough, yeah, you're going to get what's called ice supersaturated regions. And when you fly through those areas, you will get a man-made cloud behind that engine that will last a very long time and actually turn into a long-lasting high cirrus cloud. They'll last all day long, even sometimes all night long. Now, is that geoengineering? Technically, yes, it is. And why is that? Well, because it's affecting the amount of solar radiation that's reaching the surface of the Earth. So, in certain times of the day, those cirrus clouds that are induced by jet engines are going to reflect some solar radiation out for a net cooling effect. But if those contrails are long lasting and they're up there at night, then you have the exact opposite effect. You have the characteristic where there's heat that's trapped between the Earth's surface and those cirrus clouds, and the heat cannot escape. So that gives you a net warming effect. So, yes, this is technically geoengineering, but is it being done on purpose? No, it is not being done on purpose. Can it be done on purpose? Most definitely it can be. The airlines know this, and there's already experiments that have been going on where airlines have been asked to fly at altitudes where they will not leave a lasting contrail. And they've also been asked to fly at altitudes where they will leave a lasting contrail, just as a proof of concept. Can it be done? The answer is yes, it most definitely can be done, but it's not being done right now. People are saying that it's obviously being done because sometimes you'll look up in the sky and you'll see, crisscross patterns that look like X's or grids. That's just the flight paths that these aircraft are on. And if you, again, look at any of those platforms, you can obviously see that these jets are crisscrossing paths. They're flying at 90-degree angles. Sometimes they're at the same altitude. Sometimes they're separated by 1 or 2,000 feet. And that's what's creating all of those wild patterns in the sky. And for a person that's never been trained in aviation and doesn't understand that, they're going to look up in the sky and just assume that, oh my gosh, they're doing this on purpose. They're spraying us with something. What's in there? They're trying to kill us. They're trying to make us sick. You see where this comes from, Elder? And a lot of the problem is because of what happened with the COVID experience. The government got caught in a lie. They said, and you saw it, all of the talking heads on TV, Rachel Maddow, the big news anchors, and even the president of the United States got up there and said, if you get the COVID shot, you will not get COVID, and you will not spread it to others.
You won't
Well,
spread it.
those were both lies. And anybody who has a background in immunology would have known that right from the start. So this whole thing was a lie that was pushed on the American people so that they could get this product, this very dangerous product, pushed into a lot of people. And what happened? Well, a lot of people were hurt, some were maimed, and some were even killed. And so now you've got a population in America, well, all over the world actually, that is not likely to trust the government anymore. And then they start to get the idea that, well, they lied about that. Maybe they're lying about everything else. And so now you get all of these wild ideas that start popping up, even from people that have good education and are generally rock solid, start believing things like, well, maybe the earth is really flat. And well, maybe there's no space. And
Mm.
well, there's no viruses, and there's no immune system either, and there's no DNA, and there's no contagion. You see, all of
Yeah.
these all of these concepts, Elder, are bedrock scientific discoveries that have been proven and duplicated over and over and over and over again. And so, that's where some of the problem is coming from. People have just lost trust. But I can assure you that the white lines that you see in the sky are definitely ice crystals that are condensating behind an aircraft, and they become visible depending upon uh, how much moisture content is up there and how cold it is. Now, those those ice crystals uh, have to freeze on something. And so what are those things that are up there? Well, I already mentioned that there's a lot of minerals that are always up there, and they've been pushed up there by volcanoes and hurricanes and dust storms, and so they're always up there. Now, is aviation adding to the mix? Most definitely, because as a jet engine is flying, it's burning kerosene. And as I mentioned, that's going to create what's called a carbonaceous soot.
Mhm.
And there's also a lot of sulfur that's in jet fuel. And sulfur is one of the things that when it combusts, it's going to turn into sulfur dioxide. And that is going to create an acid rain problem. Okay. Now, this is exactly why the EPA demanded years ago that sulfur be removed from truck diesel fuel and also from marine diesel fuel, because they found that the uh, the sulfur dioxide that was created from the exhaust of these engines that are close to the surface of the earth, that exhaust was rising into the atmosphere, and then it was mixing with the clouds, and it would fall as acid rain. And this changes the acidity of the soil, and that is not good for biology, and it's not good for people either. So that's why that happened. Now, why is it still in jet fuel? I think the reason is because they just assume that the sulfur dioxide that's being emitted as part of the combustion process is going to be high enough in the atmosphere that it's not going to fall out as acid rain. Now, that may be true. Uh, I've looked into this, and I can tell you that if sulfur dioxide was creating an acid rain, you would definitely see it around airports, because that's where it's going to be mostly concentrated. Because that's where, of course, where the aircraft are taking off, they're using full power, and that's also where they're landing. So you would definitely see an increase in sulfur dioxide and high acidity in soil, and we're just not seeing it. We're not seeing it. So, are these particles that come out of the aircraft toxic? Yes, they are. I mentioned one is sulfur dioxide. Another one is the carbonaceous soot. Now, the problem with the soot is that the particles are very, very tiny. They're smaller than a virus, even. So small that when you breathe them, they are able to get past uh, your normal barriers that we have, including cilia, those little hairs that are in your upper throat that will
Mhm.
wash things away. from your lungs so that you can cough them or sneeze them or spit them out. So they're so small that they get right through that barrier, and then they end up in the alveoli. And the alveoli have spaces in them. It's not a solid surface, and the reason is because that's where your gas exchange of oxygen happens to the blood supply. So these small particles can get right into the lungs, and they can also get directly into the bloodstream. And they are highly uh, inflammatory. They do create an inflammatory response. And that's why we do see and have seen for decades, we have seen increased incidence of respiratory problems and also cardiovascular problems in populations that live close to high density airports. Now, the EPA has demanded over the years that fuel become cleaner, and they have pulled some of those contaminants out of the fuel. But I think we can do better. There's still sulfur in that fuel. If we pull the sulfur out of the fuel, that's definitely going to reduce the amount of sulfur dioxide that's coming out of the back of the engine. That will reduce the uh, the amount of white stripes that you see in the sky. They're still going to be there for sure. They will definitely be there, but they won't be as thick and as heavy as they are right now. There's also something else that we can do. I mentioned that when jets fly through what are called ice supersaturated regions of the sky, that's when you see those really long trails that last all day and turn into high cirrus clouds. We can avoid those areas. We can have sensors on jets that know the water vapor content of the air mass that they're flying through. And when they detect that, there will be an alarm or an oral signal in the cockpit or a warning that, hey, you're in an ice supersaturated region. You should maybe change your altitude up or down a couple of thousand feet so that you're not creating those long lasting white stripes in the sky. These are projects that are already being investigated at various airlines all over the world right now. And if anybody wants to look it up, it's called Project MIST, M-I-S-T. It's happening right now. So the airlines know that this is happening. The FAA knows that it's happening. The EPA knows that it's happening. And basically, the message that I'm trying to get out there, and the truth of the matter is, Elder, we are doing this to ourselves, okay? It's not a secret spray program, and we can fix it. We can definitely fix it. Now, let's talk about some of the conspiracy theories. There's theories that are running around out there that came from it was called Project Cloverleaf, where supposedly a mechanic found some secret tubes that were running through the lavatory tanks on a passenger jet, and supposedly traced the tubes back to a control system, and it was powered, and then traced the tubes the other direction and said that these tubes were connected to the static wicks on aircraft wings, which are very small, almost like antennas that stick out of the back of the wings. They're called static wicks for static discharge release, and stated that those static wicks were hollowed out so that the material, whatever it was, could be sprayed off the back of the wings. Now, I can tell you that with the amount of eyes that look at jet aircraft every single day, not only the pilots, I mean, we do a walk around. We walk around that aircraft before every single flight. And believe me, Elder, we know what is supposed to be on an airplane, what is supposed to be sticking out of those wings, what is supposed to be sticking out of the fuselage. If we see something that's not supposed to be there, we're going to know immediately. And it's going to trigger an investigation, and everybody's going to know about it. So, yeah, where's the proof? There is no proof. It's all conspiracy, and basically it's a bunch of lies. Now, people send me videos all the time of aircraft that look like something is being sprayed. And I can tell you that there's a phenomenon that occurs in large passenger jets. It's called wing aerodynamic condensation. And it occurs, and you can even see this if you look closely with aircraft taking off and landing sometimes. You can see kind of a fog that's coming off either the wingtips or the tips of the wing flaps, or sometimes off the top of the wing. It doesn't last very long, but you can definitely see it if you're at an airport and you're paying attention and it's a very humid day. You can see it happening as the aircraft are taking off and as the aircraft are landing. Well, this can also happen at altitude. If that wing is creating a lot of lift, then you will get that wing aerodynamic condensation that will be visible. And I will admit, it does look like something is being sprayed, but that is not what this is. It is a natural phenomenon that is completely explainable by physics. I can assure you, the videos that I've seen are from aircraft that I have flown. The most famous one is a DC-10, or a military KC-10, it's called, where supposedly these pilots were flying, well, not supposedly, they definitely were flying directly behind the KC-10 and a little higher. And clearly, I can tell that it's wing aerodynamic condensation. But people are circling these things on the back of the wing and saying that those are spray nozzles. Those are not spray nozzles. Those are what are called wing flap fairings. And how do I know? Because I flew those aircraft. So, people want to believe what they want to believe, basically.
Yeah,
But I want
yeah,
to try to get down to the nuts and bolts, the real truth, what's going on here.
yeah. Can I just say something real quick?
Sure.
And well, let's just use some common sense here. You said people think that it could possibly be a spray nozzle. Let's just think of the physical dynamics of putting a spray nozzle there. There would have to be engineers involved. There would have to be mechanics involved to install these things.
Mhm.
And what do? Pay off everybody or kill everybody? You just go down this rabbit hole. And the other thing I want to bring up is byproducts of industry. Industry does not care, didn't care back in the day until we live in the Hudson Valley region, upstate New York. And it was a big project about 20 years ago to dredge the Hudson River, where companies like GE and different companies, because they made something and the byproduct of making that, they just dumped whatever into the river,
Yeah.
causing all of these problems. So the toxins in that was probably way more than what we're talking about from the airplanes. Another byproduct from industry, not a planned conspiracy. We want to thank you for sharing a lot of this, and I know you have more to share, but I just want to tell people that we can think whatever we want because, like you said, government has let us down, and there are some unethical things that government has done for years, even before COVID, years. So we can see this distrust, but let's just follow the evidence. We
Right.
want to be truth seekers, not we don't want to make up fairy tales. Now, I've heard this since the 90s, but I've never dove into it and a deep
Right.
dive to check it
Yeah.
out. I just heard it all the time. Every program you hear,
Yeah.
they would mention this. So you begin to you hear it, you hear it, you hear it. You begin to kind of believe it. Yeah, that is a possibility. Well,
Yeah.
it's a possibility, but you still don't have the receipt from the evidence. And this is what you are providing tonight for a lot of people. You're not saying that it's not toxic or it doesn't, it's not harmful.
That's
You're
right.
just saying there's no government plan to do so on purpose like this. So
Right.
go ahead.
Well, there is a government plan to do something on purpose, and that is what, Bill Gates has been talking about for years,
Yes.
and that's called a stratospheric aerosol injection, where they actually want to purposefully spray tons and tons of reflective material high into the stratosphere to supposedly prevent global
Block,
warming. Now,
block the sun. Yeah.
yeah, so we have to look at history, Elder. The Earth is very resilient. It's like a
Hmm.
living organism, and it can handle whatever man throws at it.
Yeah.
And but that doesn't mean that we should be complacent and keep
Yeah.
polluting it. We should
Yes.
stop polluting when we can. And
Yeah.
some of these pollutants that are in jet fuel can be removed. So we should be good stewards, and we should remove those materials to make the fuel cleaner so that it's not polluting the atmosphere. But what these guys, these idiots like Bill Gates, are talking about, they're talking about adding more pollution to the
Yeah.
sky to try
Mm.
to fix a problem that really does not exist. Because
Hmm.
if you really look back at history, you'll see that the Earth has gone through warming and cooling cycles, and it
Yeah.
will continue. It will continue to do so. So
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of, Project Stardust, the
Yes.
Israel consortium with the United States that's planning on, injecting, 20 billion tons of this stuff into the upper stratosphere. That's all talk. They don't have the capability to do it. They are raising funds, and surprisingly, they've raised $75 million already, but that's not going to be nearly enough to make this project come to fruition. They are experimenting around with it. They're using high altitude balloons, and this is all divulged. You can find it. They have to tell you that they're doing it. And so, yeah, it's happening, but it's in small amounts. Now, the logistics of injecting megatons of this stuff into the upper stratosphere is just crazy. I mean, you would literally need about 1,000 wide-body jets that are completely converted with no seats,
Mm.
no passenger seats. They would have to be completely convestors that fill the entire cabin of that aircraft and literally lift hundreds of tons of this stuff into the atmosphere and start spraying it out. But the problem is you have to do it in the stratosphere, which is generally in the 60,000 foot range. We don't have aircraft that can fly that high, that are tankering aircraft. We have some military jets, some fighter jets, some stealth jets that can get that high, but they don't have the capability of tankering that much stuff to inject into the stratosphere. It's just not
Wow.
there, and it's definitely not capable with passenger type jets like Boeing 727s or Airbuses or Boeing 747s. I've flown all those aircraft. They can't get that high. So we've got a significant logistical problem, number one. And the second problem that they have is they got to sell everybody that, the globe is warming and it's a catastrophe. And the only way that we can fix it is to intervene as human beings and add more crap to the atmosphere instead of solving the problem logically, as I suggested. Let's just not put as much stuff into the atmosphere. We can cut back on the amount of sulfur. We can cut back on some other things that are in jet fuel. We can do that. And there's already a petition that's been filed. This was filed by a friend of mine. His name is Jim Lee. He has a website that's called Climate Watch. He's a very sharp guy. He, along with Renette Senum, who has a company called Gen 7, have worked with some other individuals and some backers and have filed what's called a petition for rulemaking at the EPA. And what they're saying is that what general aviation and commercial aviation is doing now and has been doing for decades is definitely polluting the atmosphere, particularly around airports. So we should pay attention to that. We should put monitors around the larger airports that detect not only the bigger particles of pollution, they're called PM 2.5 particles, but we need to have better sensors that are able to detect what are called those ultra fine particles that I talked about, the ones that can sneak past your mucosal barrier and get directly into your alveoli of your lungs and directly into your bloodstream. We need to detect and see actually how much of that stuff is around the airports and how concentrated it is. And we need to pay attention more to how it's affecting the physiology of people that live near airports. So, that's one thing that they're suggesting. They're also suggesting, as I already mentioned, reducing the amount of sulfur that's in fuel down to 15 parts per million or less, which is what the standard is now for the trucking industry. That can easily be done to aviation jet fuel without any modification to the jet engine at all. So that's an easy thing to do. And as I mentioned, just avoid jets flying through those ice supersaturated regions of the sky. Now, that brings up another point. And you can see this yourself. Sometimes you'll step outside and you'll look up and you'll see a white stripe, and it looks like it was on, then it was off, and then it came on again. Okay?
Mm.
Have you ever noticed that?
Oh
That's
yeah. Oh yeah.
yeah, and people just assume that the pilot's up there flipping a switch. No, there are no switches up there that do that. There's no way to turn that contrail on and off. What's happening is the jet is flying through different layers of the atmosphere, and where you see it, that's an ice supersaturated region. So I'm sure you've flown enough, Elder, that if you've been in turbulence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, the turbulence is because the atmosphere is moving up and down, and that's what's giving you the bumps. And sometimes they can be quite severe. And so
Yes,
if you're
sir.
flying along through an ice supersaturated region and it's nice and smooth, you're leaving a contrail, then all of a sudden it gets really, really bumpy. Well, that's because the air mass is moving up and down rapidly, and you're no longer in an ice supersaturated region. And that can be a small region of the sky, maybe a couple of miles. And then all of a sudden it smooths out again, and yeah, you're back in that ice supersaturated region that's nice and smooth, and you're leaving the contrail again. Does it look like something got turned on and off? It most definitely does, but that's not what's happening. This can all be
Mm.
explained through physics. And believe me, Elder, I've flown large enough jets all over the world. I've seen it up close and personal, and I
Yeah,
know what's going on. That's what's happening.
absolutely. Well, I think the folks need to understand how blessed they are tonight, hearing this from number one, an airline pilot who is very skilled at his job and a doctor to understand what's going on with the body and to explain all of that together. I mean, God has you in those positions to explain things to, like me. I like I said, I never dove into it like that.
Yeah,
I just heard the stories, and it did look a little weird seeing these cross patterns sometimes.
yeah,
And then when the with the combination of, yeah, can't trust Big Brother, you can see how people can take something and
yeah.
run down a dark alley screaming bloody,
Yeah,
whatever.
exactly. Exactly. And
So
here's another thing you got to think about. That white stripe is about 8 miles above your head. And whatever's coming out of the back of that jet engine, and it is toxic, as I mentioned, those carbonaceous soot particles are toxic. They are going to travel hundreds and thousands of miles and get mixed with the atmosphere before they ever reach the surface of the earth. And they are so diluted by the time they
yeah,
get there that it has absolutely no effect on
yeah,
physiology of the human body and no effect on biology. Now, people are saying that, oh my God, there's the bees are dying and the trees are dying, and there's a lot of aluminum that's showing up in the bees and in the trees. That is 100% true. But where's it coming from? I can tell you that it's local. It's coming from pesticides that are being overused, and it's also coming from agricultural fertilizer runoff. That's creating the increase in the acidity of the soil. It's not falling from 8 miles above our heads, it's
Mhm.
local. It is changing the acidity of the soil. It is releasing aluminum from the silica clay that it's normally bound to, and it's there all of the time. It's about 8% of the dirt you're walking on right now. It's always there. But if the soil becomes too acidic, then yes, the aluminum does get released into what's called ionic aluminum. And that's
Yeah.
the dangerous part because that now becomes what's called biologically available, meaning that plants and animals can take it in and it becomes part of them. And
Mhm.
that is a problem because it makes the trees too dry, it kills the bees. It's not good for human consumption either. But again, as I mentioned, it's not coming from 8 miles above your head. It's just not.
Wow, that's awesome. I can relate to what you're the misconceptions and whatnot. I mean, I'm a former railroad locomotive engineer, so I would hear things like you. I had to do a walk around
Yeah,
after the plant foreman did his walk around to an engine that I would pick up at the engine house. And then I do my own inspection. And if something stuck out, it would stick out like thumbs. You have
uh,
a checklist and when you first start, you bring it physically out and you go, yep, yep, yep. But then after you do it 100 times, you don't need that checklist anymore.
yeah,
You just visually make sure everything's right. And it sticks out like thumbs. So
yeah. And
I know it,
yeah, you're right.
and people would come to me with, "Hey, I know that you guys have a caboose," and I have to tell, "Wait a minute, we don't have a caboose anymore." And furthermore, caboose didn't do what you think it did. The
Yeah,
caboose was just an office, but a
yeah.
lot of people think that the caboose was the power behind the train, and
Oh,
I'm like, there was no. I've had people come to me and tell me that. Like,
yeah,
do they still have powerful caboose on the railroad? No, that's been gone. Number one, that never existed. But what did exist was a caboose with an office. So there's all
yeah,
of these
yeah.
misconceptions of what they think, and they
And
just
see,
run with it. No proof.
you've been in the industry, and so you know that those
Yeah,
rumors and those ideas are absolutely false. And
yeah,
so here's another thing that a lot of people don't realize. Uh, all passenger jets and military jets also go through every so often what's called a heavy C check or D check. And these are done in aircraft hangars, and they literally tear that aircraft apart. They take off every panel that has access and they look at everything. And I mean, hundreds of thousands of screws come out of these airplanes on these big jets, and they literally take them apart and they put them back together again. If there's anything in there that doesn't belong, we would know. And it would
yeah,
create an investigation immediately. You cannot hide something like what
yeah,
people are talking about. You can't
yeah,
hide that in commercial aviation, and you can't hide it in the military either. Now, if the military is doing some kind of a secret spray program, then we're going to have a whistleblower that's going to have
yes,
to come forward with the evidence and say that
yes,
they're doing it. And it's not these supposed military pilots that you see on these YouTube videos saying that they're Indigo pilots and they're paid extra to go up and spray this stuff, and they're remaining anonymous, and they're disguising their voice. You see what I mean?
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't do it like that. You do the
Have a legitimate
whistleblower
whistleblower.
exactly, and you make it known, and you
Yeah,
bring the receipts, and you
yes.
show us. It's not
Listen,
happening,
if
Elder. It's
we have to be in the business of seeking truth and telling truth. And that's why I wanted to have you on because I know this, this was out there so long and, but I knew I'm like, I don't know much about it. I just know what is being said repeatedly and
yeah.
constantly by all kinds of backgrounds, right? So
Well,
I just wanted,
if
man,
you
what
hear
better person to get than you, you know?
yeah, if you hear something over and over again, you do start to believe it. You know?
Yeah, that's a natural thing. And I think one of the Thomas Sowell said that you hear something so often, you just believe it.
Yeah,
It's just rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed.
yeah,
But we ought to know better. So we have to start. So I don't want to insult anyone's intelligence out there. I mean, you had good reasons to believe that it is possible. So, and like you said tonight, you can see why people could believe when you see all of these crossing patterns and then
yeah.
times when it stops and starts and picks up. It looks like somebody's flipping a switch in there.
It does.
But
It
the
does look
facts
like that.
are, we went over the facts. So that
Here's what I
keep on.
encourage people. Here's what I encourage people to do, Elder, and anybody can do it, and it's 100% free. Go to a website that's called Windy, Windy, windy.com. And windy.com has an add-on that's free. It's called Contrail Finder. Contrail Finder. It's free. And if you add that to Windy, it will tell you just by clicking anywhere on the map, it will tell you if contrails are going to be visible that day or not, based on the Schmidt-Appelman criteria that I already talked about. It's physics. It's plain, pure physics. And if you really want to get fancy, you take the information that you see on Windy that says, okay, contrails are visible today. Not only visible, but they're long lasting because there are ice supersaturated regions of the sky today. Then you can step outside and you can see those stripes and you can see them crisscrossing. And then you go to ADSB Exchange, which is also
Oh, yeah.
free. ADSB Exchange. Take a picture of the sky. Just take a picture with your phone and then go to ADSB Exchange and see what time you took the picture, and you can find out what jets those were. What airlines are leaving those stripes in the sky? Maybe it's not an
Mhm,
airline, maybe it's a private jet that's leaving the stripe in the sky. Maybe it's a
mhm.
military jet that's leaving a stripe in the sky as well. Now, I will tell you that uh, there's a rule that if you're flying any aircraft above 10,000 feet within the United States, you have to have your transponder turned on and it has to be emitting what's called the ADSB signal. That ADSB exchange is obviously picking up and displaying on their platform. That's the law. That has to be done. If you're a pilot and you're flying an aircraft above 10,000 feet and you have your transponder turned off, you can lose your license. You can lose your privilege to fly. That's how critical this is. And it's critical because that's how aircraft stay separated and keep from running into one another. Because the transponders that are using the ADSB exchange have alerting systems, and so you will know if there's an aircraft that's nearby that could be encroaching upon your flight path, and you take evasive maneuvers so that we don't have airborne collisions. Now, the
Wow.
airborne collision that happened over the Potomac River, the military had their ADSB turned off. The
Yes.
military,
Okay.
the military is allowed to turn off their ADSB in certain circumstances where they want to remain stealthy. And so that particular mission, they were practicing a stealth mission, is what they were doing. They were practicing. And so they were doing real life practice and they had their ADSB exchange signal turned off, which is very dangerous in a high traffic zone. And I believe the rules have changed since then. If you're operating a military aircraft around a high density airport that's carrying passengers, you can't turn your ADSB off anymore. You just can't. It's too dangerous. But if the military is operating a stealth program and they want to be completely invisible to the enemy, then they're definitely going to have their ADSB turned off. Not only that, Elder, they're not going to be leaving a white stripe in the sky, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
I
not
can,
stealthy. How
yeah.
can you how
Hmm.
can you be invisible to radar and
But
invisible to
the,
ATC if you could just
see,
step out on your back porch, look up in the sky and see a white stripe and say, "Hey, what's that?"
exactly. It doesn't make sense.
No.
Wow. Thanks for the education. That's something I always wondered about planes. I'm like, just common sense. How do planes not run into each other in the
Yeah.
sky? With
Yeah.
so much air traffic, once you're out of the airport range of air traffic control,
Yeah.
you're on your own. How do
Exactly.
you navigate that? So that explains a lot, the
Yeah.
ADSB exchange. That
Yeah, it
explains a
does.
lot. I
And
appreciate
it's
that.
believe me, Elder, it has saved a lot of lives. It definitely
Wow.
has because I can tell you that I've flown passenger jets loaded with 150 people in and out of smaller airports in Florida, particularly around Sarasota and the Venice area, that have a lot of private aircraft that are up there just sightseeing and flying up and down the beach. And, we have to fly very close to those airplanes. And I've had a couple of instances where uh, my transponder has alerted me that there's an aircraft nearby, and I had to take evasive action. And it will literally tell you, climb now, in a very
Wow.
strong, commanding voice. And it's even gotten to the point now, Elder, in the more sophisticated passenger jets, like the ones that I flew, Airbuses particularly. If the autopilot was on, the autopilot actually did the evasive maneuver itself
Oh,
and
wow.
would keep you out of harm's way. And, that's a good thing. That keeps us all
Yes.
safe. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, sir. Well, listen, sir, I don't want to keep you any longer. You have certainly, hopefully, opened some eyes tonight. And if
Yeah.
nothing else, at least people can go and do a little truth seeking for
Yeah.
themselves to find true evidence of whatever side you believe. Whatever you believe, look for the evidence, the receipt of that thing, whatever it is. I don't care what it is. Find the evidence of it. And if you can't find the evidence, you cannot say 100% sure that that exists. So I thank you for coming on tonight. But before you go, do you want to let people know where they can find you or watch your programs? And because I
Yeah.
know your
Yeah.
channel and everything.
Yeah. So there was a video that I made recently. It's called "I Turned Jet Fuel into White Stripes in the Sky," about 1 million miles worth. And that's the one that you saw. And
Yes.
that prompted you to want to talk to me about what you saw in that video. And that
Yes.
that was a good thing. And I commend you for doing that, Elder. You're the
Yeah.
you're really the first one that's been brave enough to have me on and talk about what's really going on here. There have been many
Yeah.
others that have watched the video and said, "Yeah, we should probably do a podcast." But they're just not stepping forward and doing it because this is such a hot topic and it is so extremely controversial. So I want to thank you, Elder, from the bottom of my heart for having the courage, uh, to bring a guy like me on and talk about this. So if you want to watch that video, it's available on my Rumble channel. If you just go to rumble.com and type in my name, Kevin Stillwagon, you will see that video there. It's also on YouTube. Basically, it's on all social media platforms. Um, I also write a Substack. It's entirely free. I don't charge people to read my writings. But not only do I make videos, I write about these things too. So it's all there, it's all available, and it's all free. And I appreciate people taking the interest to want to dig for the truth.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So I thank you again. It's good to have a good friend like you to come on and, forget about me being brave. You're brave also,
Mhm.
telling. But you know what? Truth has a way of, my mentor told me, he said, truth is a lonely warrior, and it really is. You become isolated sometimes, and some truth, a lot of people just they don't want to hear, and
Mhm.
some want to go another way, but we're going to stick to the facts. So we
We
thank
do.
you for coming on tonight, and God bless you. And this will not be your last time on, all right? So we got to get you
Okay.
on again. Your knowledge is really helpful, the medical knowledge, everything. And
Okay.
it's nice to have just such a good friend. So
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you.
again for tuning in.
All right.
Well, folks, that was Dr. Kevin Stillwagon, and we want to all thank you for tuning in tonight and giving us a little bit of your time. But until next time, stay in the battle. God bless you.